We are live. Now, I wonder if at one point in time, am I going to get in trouble with Bruce Buffer if I go, we're live? Welcome, everybody. I'm trying a new time today. First of all, because the kids don't seem to want to go to bed at any reasonable hour. So even the 9:30 stream slot is no longer a reliable slot until they go back to school and they're like out of the house during the day and tired enough. And until the third one is back in daycare. The evening is going to be like an impromptu live stream that I can organize for myself, but I can't in good conscience leave someone hanging because we do have a guest today, which is going to be fun. So we'll see the 4:30 time slot is good. It's good for the East Coast. It's good for the West Coast. It is almost good for Europe because it's not too late for them now. Australia, I think we are writing them off, and Japan, unless people are getting up very early, we'll see. So let's see here. I'll read some comments while people filter in. Say hi to everybody. Share the link around. It's an awkward time, so I suspect a lot of people might be actually out getting some sun and getting some vitamin D and fresh air because it is beautiful. At least it's beautiful in Montreal. 14 degrees and sunny, which is as good as it can get, or it's as good as it's gotten all season. Tater Raider in the house. Thomas Beck want a mint for that. Maybe some gum. I'm not sure what's going on here, but I may have gotten involved in a conversation. Subman, USN, ahoy. DJ, good day, fine people from Northern Cali. Hello from Southern Montreal. By the way, yeah, share the link around because YouTube has not been necessarily notifying people properly. And I discovered something about when videos get confirmed demonetized, and we're going to talk about it with Eric in a bit. Vospers B. Thornycroft. Hello, please don't tell him. Oh, too late. Sorry, man. That's funny. Okay, why is 923 taken? I just saw Tater Raider on the other one. Got Tater Raider. We got Otto von Bismarck. Okay, sorry. I don't think that if I bring up your comment and it says something, it is an endorsement for what you're saying. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I just want to say hello, Otto von Bismarck. Make Germany great again. That's very funny. Interesting avatar. We got Black Horse Cavalry. Happy Saturday. TAO Hall. This should be fun. Had a few family members block me on social media. God forbid having a different... Blocking a family member on social media or anywhere is as much of a declaration of war as can be declared among family members. It doesn't get worse than that among family members. I would say, luckily, as far as I know, none of my family members have blocked me. They're not as big on social media, but they haven't blocked my emails yet, which is always encouraging. We got Little Rock says, hi, finally caught you live. Attorney Little Rock, Arkansas. Happened to be at work when this popped up. Stopped working. Don't tell my wife. Geez, guys, you got to tell me the warnings at the beginning of the messages, not at the end, because now you're busted, Little Rock, if your wife is his wife is watching. I'm only drinking Red Bull. There is no alcohol in it yet. I've done my exercise for the day, but I also tend not to want to believe in drinking before 6 o'clock in the evening. Hey, Viva, thanks for entertaining me while I make dinner. Kritzy, my pleasure. I hope you better be east of here, because if you're making dinner at, what time is it, 4:30? 4:30. That's early, but maybe it's a long dinner. I'm editing a video for my wife now, who has decided she wants a YouTube channel as well. And she made homemade poutine from beginning to end. And now I have to edit her videos. I got to edit my daughter's videos sometimes, although she's getting good at editing on her own. And it's a snowball, but I cannot possibly complain when my wife wants to have a YouTube channel. Let's see what we got here. Diadika says, I've been close to threatening some with blocking. 94 in California, Bill Barry. That's good weather. What are we in? 4 minutes, 8 seconds. I'm going to say, bring up a few more comments for 50 seconds. Do the 5-minute intro. Let people flood in. Say hello to the community. Shannon Petry. As one of my commanders used to say when I was in the army, it's 6 o'clock in Germany, so we can have just one drink. I'm pretty strict and religious about the certain times of day. You go by coffee in the morning, Red Bull coffee in the afternoon, exercise, then you can relax with a drink. Kurt Dare, hi from Indiana. Kurt, I thought it said hi from India for a second, which I don't know what the time zone is between now and India, but maybe they're not all that far off. Hello, Kurt. How you doing? John Beck in the house. Her channel name, Vivette Fry, or Going to Pull. We're trying to work on a good name here. We're going to see what happens. Sweden is in the future. Joshua Cornelius in the house. Josh, how you doing? Hope all is well with you as well. Okay, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, seconds in. Why does everyone presuppose that I am a Trump supporter just because I am seeking the truth? I caught a lot of flack from posting your Trump disinfectant video. Yeah, no, and I'm going to become like the poster boy for a Trump supporter, even though, first of all, I'm Canadian. One person, okay, I'm going to bring, no, I'm getting distracted. One person accused me of being a Trump supporter, and they said in the comments, in the tweets, well, they didn't really accuse me. They said, now do Trump's, inappropriate comments. And I said, incidentally, I've done a video where I criticized Trump with the reporter, Claudio Vega, where I said, he said something which was a knee-jerk response, which as far as I'm concerned, he immediately regretted, which was unjustified. But like the problem is when people are in that framework, it can never be enough anti-Trump to justify anything that is not anti-Trump. I was just having this discussion with somebody who made a similar observation. And I said, look, I'm not shy to do either where I think it's warranted and where we can learn from the experience, but it's just never enough depending on people's perspectives. Okay, so let's bring in Eric Hunley. I know so many Erics. I just in the second I said Eric, I like 10 other last names came through my mind. Eric Hunley, who I met because he's got a podcast called Unstructured. Which for the longest time I was saying unscripted because I'm mentally, I have my quirks where I program the wrong word, and now I just did it. Unstructured. He reached out to me and said he'd want to have me on his podcast, and we did a podcast, and it was great. And I like Eric's perspective. I like the way he approaches people and questions and discussion. That was a while back, and I've since listened to a few of his podcasts since then. But he's had some very interesting people on his podcast. The podcast is, you might hear some noise upstairs. There's kids still running around. The podcast is much along my perspective in life, which is it's open discussion. It's open to quirky people, eccentric people, and where the interview is not necessarily an endorsement. Where, I caught flack when I did the live stream with Mike Cernovich because people said like even to give this guy a platform is an endorsement. And first of all, I don't agree with that because I think sometimes getting the ideas out there, if they are offensive ideas, giving them a platform is giving a platform for their potentially offensive ideas to reach the ears of people for judgment. Flip side is I also didn't have any platform that was giving anybody any more meaningful exposure than they had on their own. But, and so Eric and I had an interesting discussion where, guilt by association, who can you have discussions with in this era of social media? How much are you walking on eggshells in everything that you do? And so it was good. It's nice. And so that's who Eric is, but I'm going to bring him up now. Let him introduce himself, explain himself probably better than I could. And without further adieu, Eric Hunley.
How you doing, man?
Good, and yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. I finally made it to big time with a great Viva Fry.
When we did our podcast, I think maybe, do you remember the month? Because I think I might have been
it was below 100,000. You crossed 100,000 as I released it. I would like to say I'm the cause.
Well, correlation, causation, the timing worked out perfectly.
Hey.
And incidentally, everyone's going to notice Eric and I might have similar perspectives, but I think we have diametrically opposite demeanor. Eric is calm. He speaks methodically. And you'll see it's soothing to actually listen to Eric talk. But yeah, so we did it a while, like it was before 100,000 for sure. Mm-hmm. And you have since, well, okay, so explain who you are. And I'm going to try to get to the super chat. I don't want to interfere too much with the conversation, but I'm going to do my best. Please forgive me if I miss any. As always, Little Rock, thank you very much. Now, Eric, who are you? What are you about?
I host a show called Unstructured, and now I'm trying to follow your lead, and I'm building a YouTube channel, which is just Eric Hunley. You can look it up. And I'm actually doing video interviews that are rolling into Unstructured as audio interviews later. Like, I don't know, have you watched Netflix Narcos?
No. I know of it, but I've never watched it.
Well, both of the actual DEA agents that the show is based on, I've had on the show. I have John McAfee coming up, and that should be a video interview as well, and a podcast interview. I see you have a fan club behind you.
So someone's coming down, but some chats I try to. This one is not necessarily going to be kid friendly, but we'll see. He's back upstairs. Sorry to interfere. No
worries. I'll keep my language on point.
Oh, go on. They've heard worse in terms of language.
As long as it's not directed at them.
Often.
No,
we watched Clueless last night, and I never fully appreciated until now that it's a story about an underage teenage high schooler who has a romantic, who ends up having a romantic relationship with her stepbrother, but who seems to be older than 18. But
wow,
okay, total sidetrack. So you have the podcast, you're starting a YouTube channel, and you're rolling in the audio from those interviews into the podcasts.
Yeah, I'm also doing a live stream on the YouTube channel because, like, I have people like you on. I think you were my second live stream, and the idea is that people who are guests on my podcast, if I can bring them back, a lot of them don't have their own platforms. So an example is Chase Hughes. He's a behavioral engineer, or Dana Ridenauer, who I just had on. She's an undercover FBI agent. Well, she's an author. She has an audience, but she doesn't necessarily have her own platform. So this gives an opportunity for people who listen to the podcast who have their own questions to actually ask questions themselves. Because I do a ton of research. I have 10 plus hours on every guest, but I don't necessarily get every question everybody has.
It is, it is. I watched, I listened to a few podcasts, but the one that I found the most interesting was the spy in East Germany. What was his name?
Jack Barsky was a KGB agent who lived undercover in the United States for almost 10 years, or right around 10 years, and literally was deep undercover. He is now an American citizen. He managed to quit the KGB by telling them he had AIDS.
That is, I mean, okay, so first of all, it's an amazing person to be able to interview. And I mean, the question I have is always, when you're interviewing, that type of person, say like someone with that experience, how nervous are you? How nervous are you of getting into something that they might not want to get into, tapping into something that you didn't think was going to go there, or revealing something that they may not want to have revealed?
With him, I felt fine because he's been around. He's done it for a long time. And I did a lot of research. He's been on other shows that I know, like Jordan Harbinger, and I know Jordan. And he's been on 60 Minutes, things like that. He's been debriefed by the FBI. He knows what he can reveal, what he can't reveal. And I figure if I start down a path, he can always duck or evade. And if I feel him ducking or evading, I'll just move on rather than put him in a corner. But I do sometimes feel nervous. Like, I have John McAfee coming up. That one is kind of a live wire interview in my mind. I don't know exactly where I'm going to go with them or how, because part of the angle is I try to find a hook early on, some way to get their attention. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Voss. He wrote the book Never Split the Difference.
I'm going to say yes, but I'm not 100% certain.
I think you gave it to your brother, or your brother recommended it, and you shared the video out. But I had him on. He's a FBI agent, big time now. He has a master class, so he's arrived. But with him, he's been everywhere. And I was trying to figure out, how do I, crack the veneer? Because, these guests, they kind of do the same thing over and over and over and over. How do you get something different out of them? And with like Voss, I just literally thought about it. I was like, well, you're from Iowa. Why do you sound like you're from New York? And he was kind of like, well, and he, smiled. He goes, well, I kind of have to get along with the street cops. But as soon as that happened, it was like, now he's paying attention. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's sort of my angles. How do I just come up with something to make the guest engage with me?
It's very interesting. Now, I don't know if you can hear the kids screaming upstairs.
Of course.
I'm gonna. That's why I'm muting it whenever I'm not talking.
They're not that bad.
Spartan Chuckles says you are becoming popular. I've seen a number of people share your videos and mention you on Facebook and other YouTuber channels. That's fantastic. I mean, first of all, that's great. I just hope I don't push my luck with the YouTube gods, so to speak. And we got, hey VF, hit that like button since you never asked. Did you hear the rumors of the King's Jump Bosch heart? Yeah. We've heard. I'm not. Well, I'm not necessarily going to talk about anything like that, but I'm waiting for the big news outlets to start reporting on it. But we'll see. I heard it's insane. But okay, but Eric, so you have now I know this because we talked before, but you study how to conduct interviews or
Sure.
I don't want to say persuasion techniques, but what sort of things have you studied in order to conduct an interview, in order to get what you want or to know where it's going?
Well, ironically, a lot of the people I interview are body language experts. And I also interview persuaders, things like that. I don't know that I study them. I study them to ask questions, but I never did a formal study. I just try to be a person. I try to be incredibly curious. And I'm a little bit slow. So I'm hoping that over time, since I keep interviewing them over and over and over, the different types, that I'll eventually learn it myself.
Okay, no, it's interesting. Now, if for those watching who have never heard of you, or maybe meeting you for the first time now,
Yes, sir.
the three most amazing or the three most interesting people that you've interviewed, who have they been?
I'll throw three names out there that just come to the top of mind. James Fallon. He is a neuroscientist, a professor, and he studies brain scans. He very famously was doing a study on Alzheimer's and had a stack of brain scans. And he also was doing a study on psychopaths and had a stack of brain scans, people in prison who've been convicted of murder, etc. Well, he and his family, of course, donated brain scans for the Alzheimer's because they needed, a control group, if you will, to compare, hey, how do normal people fit with that? And he was going through the Alzheimer's stack and found a brain scan of a psychopath mixed in. And he was like, somebody's playing a joke on me. Well, it turned out it was his own. So I had an interview with him, not only about that, but we kind of went into language centers of the brain, where it lights up. But he was also a personal friend of George Carlin. So he went down a path about George Carlin and how Carlin thought he was crazy and used to have James kind of undercover in the clubs talking to him and recruiting. So that one I really enjoyed.
Okay, in fact, let me pause on that one. Did he explain what the brain scan of a psychopath looks like and how it differentiates from the brain scan of a non-psychopath?
Sure. Essentially, in a psychopath, there's certain areas of the brain, and I can't tell you which ones, but they're kind of on the side, that are not lit up. So when they run a brain scan, they have more electricity going through it than normal brain. But when you see a psychopath's brain, you'll see kind of like blue areas, and the blue areas are where it's not lit up. So the psychopath, how they lack empathy, those areas I think are somehow related to it. And I'm already way out of my depth.
No, I mean, don't worry about it. It's fair enough, and always answering under the caveat of yes, that was. You're not necessarily the brain scan expert, but no. It's just because the word also gets thrown around a lot, and I know there's a clinical sense and a clinical term and a lot of distinctions.
We talked about that actually, and one, psychopath is not a clinical term. It does not exist in the what is it?
Sociopath under
neither. Neither of them do. Antisocial personality and narcissist both are in there. The DM something or another, DM4, whatever it's called. Psychopath and sociopath are not actually in there. Borderline personality, antisocial disorder, things like that are in there. So that surprised me. I think it might have been him who set me straight on that. But also on the psychopath, a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath is that at least from him, is a psychopath is born and a sociopath is made.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because all children are borderline. I mean, and it's not their fault, but when we come into this world, it's all about me, 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 me. They learn empathy. So if they're stunted, then their empathy is going to be turned down, if you will. And that gets into the sociopathic.
And I was going to say, if anyone who has never dealt with kids would certainly not necessarily know, but anyone who has dealt with kids, yeah, their behavior is, if it were in an adult, it would be qualified any number of ways. But
yes, real Bambunga.
Let's
DSM 4 and 5.
Otto Van Bismarck says, "What's your opinion on Dan Crenshaw?" And I presume you're asking Eric, because everyone should know mine, having seen my video from a few days ago.
Well, I was in the Army. He squared away. He's a pretty squared away SEAL soldier. He's the kind of SEAL that I really admire more. A lot of people are huge fans of Jocko Willink, for example. Jocko to me is a little over the top and just a little in your face, like, oh, I'm going to get up at 4:30, 3:30, and destroy the world. Crenshaw to me is a very extremely disciplined, well-spoken, very thoughtful person. And his military training, I feel like it comes across in the good way. Like when he was talking to Bill Maher, he's saying, sir. And that is a very military thing mentality wise, because now he's a congressman. So it's the same principle. He sees himself as serving the people and he acts in that manner. So I think he's a great representation of Congress wherever politically anybody stands.
I totally agree. And it's an interesting thing with Jocko Willink as well. I follow him on Twitter. And it's, you know, he puts forward these things, you know, get up at 4:30, you know, work. But there's a certain other reality to it, that sleep is extremely important, and it's not necessarily the best way to do it for everybody to be working on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But I agree that two disciplined approaches just taken a little differently. Okay, Andy B says if viruses can be proved fake, who's culpable? It's a big question. All that I know is that if it turns out that, oh, it doesn't matter. It's a big question. Let's not.
Nature. I sue you, nature.
Let's not. Well, the virus is not fake. I mean, nobody. I had this discussion with somebody. The issue is not the lethality or the lethalness of the virus. It's a question of whether or not the measures are proportionate. And this is strictly in respect of the discussion between how Sweden responded versus how other countries responded. Real Bambunga. Did you know that do you know if the inactive part of the psychopath's brain was the left prefrontal cortex? Although I think the book you're thinking of is DSM-4/5. Real Bambunga. Yes. First of all, we have one episode left of Wild Wild Country, just to let you know. Real Bambunga, I promised I would watch it. One episode left. Sorry, now Eric.
Yes, on the DSM-4/5. Thank you. I just have a brain fart on that. I don't think it's the left prefrontal cortex, though. I think it's another part of the brain, the flight or flight area. The prefrontal cortex, and now I'm going to get way off my depth, but I think that's tied in with, I forgot the guy's name, but essentially he had a railroad accident and there was a spike that went up through his brain.
Phineas Gage.
Phineas Gage, yeah. And I believe that might have been that area. And what happened with it is that he was unable to make a decision on anything. And that was kind of a horrible situation, because we emotionally decide things before we actually think about them. So what happens is we emotionally decide to do something and then we justify it later.
That's definitely sounds about right. Okay, now Eric, we didn't get the other two best or what do you say your best, your favorite podcasts?
They're all my children. No,
some children. Never mind.
Oh, this guy Viva Fry. No,
I'm not. Well, trust me, I don't even expect, because I know the people you've done podcasts.
You've been on twice though, so I mean, seriously, and those were great. Jim Clemente comes to mind. He's a FBI agent, one of the producers and main writers on Criminal Minds, and his episode, he's an FBI agent. He worked child sex crimes. He actually was mentored by another guest I had, Ken Lanning, who kind of trained him. But Jim, that was an interview I'm particularly proud of, because in my research, I found an offhand reference in a British PDF that was kind of tucked on his website somewhere. And they talked about him having the bone cancer after 9/11. And I hadn't seen anything about it. And I asked him about it. And he said, yes, he had leukemia because he was a first responder for 9/11. And he talked about what he went through with that, the fact that his father's office was in one of the buildings. He was at the Pentagon. And of course, we're going to see more and more people who are super disgusting in a horrible event right now with coronavirus, already the scams. But he had to take over the construction equipment with the other FBI people at the Pentagon because the contractors were stealing things out of the Pentagon when they were supposed to be cleaning up files and things of that sort. So the actual FBI agents had to work in there, and they wound up getting sick. And it turned out, I guess, a week before the interview, he had to bury one of his friends who had died from the 9/11. And it was very, very impactful and just it was a little dark, I admit, but it was very compelling. I really, really enjoyed it. Jack Barsky comes to mind. That one, I really liked it. I think that it's one of the most important episodes I had, probably in the sense that I had more people just want to share that outright. I didn't even ask them. People are coming out of the woodwork for it. But that one I appreciated because we went into, I feel, a different direction. It wasn't just, oh, you were undercover, isn't that cool? It was more of a, you were undercover. How did that affect your thoughts of yourself and your identity? What was that like to live as two people? He had had a family in Germany, wife, kids here. So he's literally a bigamist. And he talked about how he needed to see a psychiatrist who was specialized. You know, is there anybody in the world who can help him, because he is almost perfectly unique? And how many people can you talk about going to another country who speaks another language in a completely different culture and being cut off from everyone and living a lie, which is interesting to me. Also, I'm of the odd view that, unlike Robert Hansen or somebody like that, who I consider traitors and they can just rot in hell, I consider Jack Barsky to be a patriot. He was just a patriot to another country.
It's very interesting. I mean, if anybody hasn't, well, I mean, for anyone who has not heard the Jack Barsky podcast, go check it out. I think I shared it at the time.
You did.
And no, it was phenomenal because, first of all, the idea of someone seeking, trying to see a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist in someone like him who's introspective, totally intelligent beyond probably what any psychiatrist you could ever find. And I was like, how do certain people, what benefit would even seeing a psychiatrist be for someone who will probably be more intelligent than the psychiatrist and haven't experienced that, but for the platitudes that psychologists or psychiatrists can utter, it'll be okay, or do meditation or whatever. How does anyone even seek the type of help that they need, or are they even beyond help?
Well, I had Dana Ridenour on too, and because I opened that vein with Jack Barsky, I thought it was very interesting to pursue it with the FBI undercover agents, because guess what? They're all undercover. Some are just working for us, some are working away. Obviously he didn't work for us, but Dana had that issue too. And by the way, she's a live stream on my YouTube channel a couple of weeks back, but she went undercover with the Animal Liberation Front. And she was undercover for 7 years, deep undercover, to the point where, now it's a hardship to me. It's probably fine for some people, but she actually turned vegan before she went. So she had to change her diet, her lifestyle. She couldn't talk to any of her family, anything else. So there's a lot of parallels. It's very similar. And that was quite fascinating. She also kind of went a little native in her mind. So after she came back out, she was sort of like F the man, and did not get along with others in the squad and different things like that. She still struggles with some of it to this day, where she doesn't believe in, obviously she worries about animal cruelty. And one of the problems is that she believes in a lot of what they did, but obviously things like burning down buildings and threatening life, they can't do that. So that is a very confusing type of scenario. So I could almost see a Dana and a Jack being able to really have a deep conversation. And actually, I will kind of try to pursue getting them both together on a live stream. I think that would be a fascinating interview.
Now, it is. Real Bambuga had a question, said, "How deep in the Pentagon was he?" And I think that was for the second guest we were talking about.
I'm not sure, but I know he was working at the point where there was rubble, but I never got any kind of specific details.
It's amazing. Now, how long have you been doing the podcasts for?
March 15th was my second year anniversary.
March 15th of this year.
Correct.
Okay. And
also
so
200 episodes.
Let's get into the McAfee, because this is the one where it's funny. At some point you get sort of not sensitized, but you realize that it's not the end of the world to do interviews with controversial figures.
Sure.
But then there is the next level. McAfee, as far as I understand now, he's not in exile, but he is living off a boat out of the country, running for president.
I've heard that. I don't know if he's on the boat or not on the boat. A dear friend of mine, another podcaster, kind of connected me with him, Chris Lockhead of Follow Your Different. He's a 3-time Silicon Valley CMO. And he talked to McAfee or interviewed him about his days in Silicon Valley, because McAfee knew Jobs, knew Larry Ellison, all these people. So that was fascinating too. And he's like, talking about Jobs, he effing stank to high heaven. It could, and McAfee has no filter.
Just so we know,
That's him.
Yeah, but and it's funny. I take for granted everybody knows who McAfee is because McAfee virus protector from
That's him.
the late 90s. Okay, so sorry. Explain for anybody who doesn't know who McAfee is, because they might not have been alive back then or conscious.
Sure.
Who is McAfee? What's his story? And how did you land the interview? And when is it, by the way?
Okay. John McAfee is a fascinating character. He created one of the original antivirus products, McAfee antivirus, named after him. I don't know if Norton came out at the same time or not, but I know both were competing with each other back in the day. He sold the company and there's a lot of mysteries with him, but a very, very, very rich person. After he sold it, he kind of went to Colorado and set up like a yogi ashram type of thing. And there's been accusations that it may have been a 4-letter word, like, rhymes with salt. And he had different people there. He's sort of a guru. And then he shut that down and he moved to Belize. And in Belize, he got into some trouble, was accused of a rape and also of murdering his neighbor. And there was a lot of drama. He was on the run. He crossed over in Guatemala, wound up getting exiled from Guatemala to the United States. So he managed to kind of slide through. There were still questions out there about the murder, the rape, a lot of things with him. And then he ran for president in 2016 as a libertarian. Fun fact, I actually interviewed Austin Peterson, who is one of the people he ran against in 2016 as well, another libertarian candidate. And lately, from what I understand, John McAfee, very recently at least, was on a boat because there was tax problems. Like, he didn't want to pay taxes, didn't believe in paying taxes, but he is running for president, but running from the seas or high seas on a boat, which the guy is a character. I mean, you cannot. He's one of the few people that makes Cernovich seem a little bit pedestrian.
Well, I mean, and in fairness to Cernovich's current day personality is indeed much different than what I discovered was his personality back in the day. Doesn't necessarily seem to be the same thing for McAfee, who I learned about McAfee. I listened to Howard Stern when I had Sirius Radio and when I actually drove a car because we left the house. But so that's why I heard a bunch of stuff about McAfee on Howard Stern. Mm-hmm. And it's like it's not just like the stuff of movies. It's like the stuff of the Big Lebowski of movies, where you just actually can't believe some of the stuff.
The Coen brothers, yeah.
It's Coen brothers type person. How first of all, how do you reach out to him, and how do you secure this podcast?
Well, like I said, my friend Chris Lockhead gave me an introduction to his wife through an email. And I reached out. It was kind of nothing. And that happens a lot with it is, you'll reach out to somebody and you don't hear from them forever. So he released a thing about the coronavirus, another video. And I was like, well, let me hit him again and say, he has a very important message about this, and pitched again. And she came back with a long, a laundry list of requirements that I had to follow. And I agreed to them, and we are scheduled for this coming Thursday, April 30th.
Which is 5 days away.
Yes.
Okay. And now I don't want to ask you to disclose more than you might be at liberty to disclose. Can I ask what sort of conditions? Like, did he insist on seeing a list of the questions you intend on asking?
No, he's good about that. His big conditions, and I appreciate it actually, is that I have to promise that I don't just put it down one platform, if you will.
Okay.
Like I have to send him a link that will allow it to be heard in wide of an area as possible. So like if I did an interview with him and it was a Spotify only show or Patreon show, he wouldn't do it. It has to be, widely viewed, if you will. And because of who he is, I probably will treat him like I did our friend Mandy O'Brien, who, because she's kind of a hot button person at times, I release the interview completely unedited.
So
I think that's the only way.
Did he? Because I imagine if I were going to do, if I were, not that I intend or anticipate being that type of person, but if I'm going to do an interview where I know it's a hostile environment or potentially hostile, the only thing I would ask or insist on is that it not be edited. Do whatever you want with it afterwards, because you can't prevent people from splicing and dicing. But the actual interview itself should be unedited, intact, so that people can see it in the source. Did he have that requirement?
He did not, but that's just something that I feel I should do. I had an interview lately. You mentioned my best interviews. I had one that went completely off the rails, and I released it in that same manner, that it was just completely unedited. Didn't make me look good because the guy thought I was an idiot. Made it very clear. But I thought that his message was important enough that if he was just like a marketer or something, I would have, well, one, I wouldn't have finished it. Two, I never would have released it. But with this guy, he is on a crusade against the polygraph. And I released that interview uncut. And that was quite interesting.
I am who was the person?
That was Doug Williams.
And I'll just presume that he was falsely convicted on the basis of a polygraph.
No. He was convicted for showing people how to beat it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. He served 2 years federal time. Well, he actually testified in front of Congress and was partially responsible for, in the United States, that the polygraph cannot be used by corporations for employment.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a scandal as to whether the polygraph has any use, even in the context of criminal proceedings, or reliability in the context of criminal proceedings. Right. Real Bambuga says, so who's changed more, Buzz Aldrin or McAfee? Unclear, or unsure. So next Thursday, it's going to be a live stream on YouTube.
It will not be a live stream, but what I will be doing is releasing it as a YouTube video within a day or two.
Okay.
So please subscribe, everyone who is interested.
Oh, well, I mean,
please subscribe those who aren't interested.
and either way, it is going to be phenomenally interesting. I'm dying to actually see where it goes. How much research have you done into McAfee thus far?
Well, I mean, I've obviously I've watched the documentary on him. I've listened to Chris's interview with him. I know quite a bit about libertarian politics in general, but I'm not sure which tack I'm going to take because, one, we're talking about actual criminal charges here. So I have to be extremely careful on how or if I address the situation. I feel like I have to, but I'm sensitive to the fact that I think the FBI may be investigating. He probably can only say so much. Plus, he's a live wire. I have to try to keep him on the line, if you will.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's not something I would. It's not something I would do, and not judgmentally. I would say from a liability perspective, because I would not necessarily want to be the one at risk of having someone divulge incriminating information, especially as a lawyer, because it's why I don't want to ethically, professionally. I wouldn't want to be the one who, in doing an interview, gets someone to basically sink themselves and
sure
admit something that's going to inculpate them. Nor do I want to, blow their defenses out of the water. I'll never disclose who I was in touch with, but I've been in touch with lawyers and people on issues that are currently pending. And I said, look, I don't even want to do it because I would ask you questions which would involve asking you to reveal your defenses. And after the fact, we can talk about it, but that's my issue. But with McAfee, especially I would ask him questions about these salacious stories that I have heard about him, which might
scatological stories.
Well, yeah, there's been some stuff, but I would do it. The only question is like if you want to get enough content or not enough content, but rather have something that's long and not trigger your interviewee to cutting the cord and just leaving. You have to do it in a manner that will not push them away. But I think McAfee looks like he's going to be able to deal with it.
He's pretty unfiltered and studying my persuasion, if you will, or trying to. I think I will probably just open it talking about how unfiltered he is and how reliably honest and straightforward he is about any subject, hoping that primes the pump a little bit to where he feels like we've set a baseline that, yeah, we're going to be very open and freewheeling, and hopefully he, is open with me.
Michael F says, what's your channel? And Scott Ferguson says under 300 subs. Yeah, Eric's channel. This is like the thing about YouTube is the snowball builds the snowball. Eric just started on YouTube. And I told him when he was getting started, it's a difficult racket because it's just a massive ocean of fish, and it takes time to eat enough plankton to get to a certain size and so on. But under 300
started in January.
It started in January, and it's impossible, but he started. It's there. The link to Eric's channel is in the description of the video. If anybody wants to post it right now in the comments, that would help. Please. So check him out and check out his interviews. They're great. It's obviously it's a different pace. It's a different style than my channel, but it's invaluable because it's a totally different format. So check it out. So okay, it's gonna be great. I mean, so now let's get into the other social side of this. You're going to interview McAfee. Are you worried about what happens after you conduct such an interview in terms of getting pigeonholed, blacklisted, or placed in a box where people say, "Oh, well, only a certain type of person would interview McAfee to begin with, and therefore I'm going to write Eric Hunley off from all future consideration"?
I do worry about that sometimes. I think that McAfee is enough of a general draw that the salaciousness at least will get it. It's kind of like if I interviewed Joe Exotic from the Tiger King, I don't think that they would say, "Oh, Eric interviewed Joe Exotic," because McAfee is a character. There are other people I would worry more about, like you have Cernovich, and I've gotten a ton of flack about Mandy O'Brien, which is just, it's like, whatever, guys.
I don't get it. I mean, I know that she's vocal on Twitter. She's unfiltered on Twitter. I know that she has some views. I didn't know what was all that controversial about Mandy. I don't know what's all that controversial about Cernovich. The funny thing is, it seems like the controversial aspect of the individual is a question of how society frames them and not necessarily the individual themselves.
True.
And so and it's interesting because like Joe Exotic, yeah, he's trending, he's popular. Of course, he's a wacky, zany dude who may have killed lions, cubs and whatever. But no one would blame anybody for doing an interview with him. I think the funny thing is partly because some people believe there's some legitimacy to the story that he wants to tell, even if he is totally off the wall. Whereas, if people want to demonize someone, they say there's no legitimacy to the story they're trying to tell. So giving them a platform is amplifying their unjustifiable message.
It's funny you mentioned the being a reflection of people. The most brilliant person I can think of who did that was actually Barack Obama, and he even said, "I am a reflection of whatever you wish."
Yeah, I don't like that as a trait.
I'm just saying that he was good at that, and he understood that exact issue and used it.
Yeah. Incidentally, watch Hoaxed. I watched Hoaxed.
I did too.
I didn't. Incidentally, another perfect example. I watched that critically. A lot of it I agreed with. Some of it I didn't agree with. But it is nonetheless, it should be required viewing, even if it makes you sick and aggravated to look at, because there's enough in there to make you think and question what you're being told, even if there is, there's some of it that might be exaggerated, that might be a little, not hyperbolic is not the word, but rather, some of
exaggerated, or
it has its own narrative, and but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have valid points. It's an amazing. It's not much different than Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent for the modern age, for the digital age. But it was great. I mean, it was a very interesting thing. It was well done. It was thorough.
Scott Adams is like that too. I mean, a lot of people can't stand Scott Adams, but he backs up his thoughts. I don't know if I agree with every single thing he ever says, but he is very thoughtful and worth just looking at, listening to, and saying, okay.
I would love to do a stream with Scott Adams because.
Oh yeah, me too.
I don't agree with everything he says either. I've read the book. The book is interesting. The book is critical thinking. I don't. The idea, like talking about persuasion, because he's a trained whatever. He's got a
hypnotist, yes,
trained hypnotist, and he's got he has studied persuasion. And someone said, studying persuasion is like studying manipulation, and it's not necessarily a good thing. And I sort of tend to lean that way because there's a persuasion.
Well, you did it in court.
Say it again?
You did it in court. You're persuading people to your side. I mean, that's
thing. Well,
you are a lawyer, so evil.
Well, that's the other thing. Lawyers are, people hate lawyers is because they are persuading people not in what they believe, but in terms of what they want them to believe because of the context. But then I say there's different ways of persuasion. Like, what was the book about the pillars of the 7 pillars of? Oh, I forget what it was, but it was in terms of how to build an audience and how to, how to have a mantra. You have a logo. You have a brand. You have a label. That I never liked that type of persuasion because that sort of does feel like manipulation, where you're not persuading on the strict substance of the ideas. It's persuasion by form and not by substance. And I strictly believe in persuasion by substance and not by form, which is why I might not be the best persuader in the world. But
it's hard. It's hard because it all falls into intent. If you persuade somebody to stop doing drugs, you're probably helping the world. If you persuade somebody to start, you're probably not. Just saying. It's like, there are times and places. I'm definitely more of the Robert Cialdini school of influence. And his is very much about being ethical. And he teaches, okay, here's what this principle is. Here's where it can be helpful. Things like getting people to actually go to their medical appointments more frequently. And then here's where it can be abused a little bit.
No, so it's fair enough. I mean, and it is, it's just that I know that people have the impression that when they talk about someone who's persuasive, they talk about polished, someone who manipulates in terms of breathing patterns and telling people what they need to hear before. And I mean, there's the insincere persuasion, which is manipulation. And then there's the sincere persuasion, which is just trying to make people understand or just trying to convince people of your authentic, legitimate, deeply held beliefs. But so now getting back to the question, you're interviewing McAfee. Are you worried about being pigeonholed, or are you even worried about the notoriety, the publicity that it might generate? Because when I said the other day, every fear hides a wish. It's like, I'm fearful of getting this type of exposure, but they also wish for that type of exposure. Are you fearful of what it might bring?
We're all sluts. We want any exposure, but it's a hard call. Truthfully, my biggest fear is that nobody really pays attention, which is very possible. I've had interviews that's like, oh, this is going to be great. The whole world is going to fall to my knees, and crickets. But I don't fear being pigeonholed with him. I have had others that kind of made me a little more nervous. But it's a weird question too, like being pigeonholed. Well, who's the biggest single podcaster out there besides Joe Rogan now? Probably Ben Shapiro. And he's definitely pigeonholed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a crazy right-winger, conservative, whatever. So in a weird way, being controversial or pigeonholed could actually be successful. I don't really want that. I personally, one thing I like about you is I think you're pretty down the middle. And I think we agree on that, which sadly is sometimes the weakest spot to be in, that soft, murky middle.
There's the expression, if when you stand in the middle of the road, you get hit by traffic on both sides.
Perfect.
No, you know what's funny? I think I'm down the middle. I know the irony is I can always pick my examples of where the left have accused me of being too far right, the right has accused me of being too far left, and I have my opinions. The tendency that I've noticed is that on social media, and this is where we're going to get into like the depth and the deep
Sure.
part of the conversation on social media. If you are not if you are centrist, you still get pigeonholed as being extreme right or alt right or whatever it is. You still get pigeonholed as being on the right
Or a coward.
or well,
That have an opinion, do something. It's like, oh, you're too chicken to say, and it's like sometimes, well, yeah, I am.
No, it's true. You get called a coward by the people who are more extreme on one end of the spectrum than you are. And someone said to me, someone posted a comment that said, I shouldn't be referring to it as the My Sharona Cyrus. I should be sticking up to the censorship on YouTube. And on the one hand, it is very easy for people to tell other people to cut their nose off to spite their face or what they should be doing. I always said the irony is people telling you what you should say to fight the people who are telling you what you can't say. And there's an irony in just people telling you what to say, period. But yeah, the funny thing is, in the center, I still find you get pushed, you get categorized as being on the right. True, on both ends, they say if you're in the center, you're not picking a side and you're a coward as a result of it. But the funny thing is just in terms of who you then get to talk to afterwards, McAfee is not necessarily known for being, like a politically right figure that someone
he's libertarian.
Yeah. So like if you were to have interviewed, just say by whatever fluke it happens, Trump, you'll probably never get an interview from anybody on the left again. And
no,
if you were to interview, I'm trying to think of who would be the most radical person on the left. I don't.
If I got Alex Jones, it would be over. If I got,
yeah.
Who is? You know what? You can't. Okay, maybe it's picking sides, but I can't. Who am I going to get on the left? The left doesn't interview.
Well, so I've
reached out to some people, and I just right wingers tend to be out there and available, but it's very hard to find who's going to be the quote lefty. I had Brad Schreiber on who wrote about the Sudanese Liberation Army, so I went heavier into that because I'm into that. But he is definitely a left winger. He said, Bernie Sanders is a bit conservative to him. But that's about it. And he's not really a politician.
It's very interesting. I hate like drawing the lines or making the categories, but I know who I've reached out to in terms of doing interviews, podcasts, collaborations. I know who has said yes. The world knows who has said yes. They just don't know who has said no or who has not responded. And it's an interesting sandbox. And of the people who have said yes, what I find truly amazing is none of them have asked for questions beforehand. None of them have set any parameters. They just say, like unedited. No, none of them have even said don't edit. I'm of your, I'm in line with you there, where I say out of fairness, I don't want anyone thinking I edited to make them look bad or to make them look good. Just they are who they are. But so I know who has said yes. I know who has not responded. And I know of those who said yes, it's always open. It's always ask whatever you want. I don't care.
A lot of people you've interviewed who said yes are like Ezra,
Ezra Barnes.
These guys they're used to taking in the nuts. I mean, honestly, it's hard to get them because they're pretty prepared mentally, and I think that they can duck. If you ask a question they don't like, they can duck, they can weave. They're very used to a confrontational interview, so that's probably why they're like, I don't care.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but and I don't want to say I'm not putting anyone on the left or the right. I'm just thinking of all the people. Yeah, Barnes, Ezra, Cernovich, and then I've done the bigger. I've had some big, well-known people and some people who were not known at all. And then some in the middle, like Amazing Lucas, Nate Brody. Well, you and when we talked about the podcast, like I don't care what you ask me, but I would like, to avoid the questions which are clearly not divisive by nature, but just divisive in reality. It's like, who'd you vote for? Which are irrelevant questions. They just set camps. But so of all the people I've done that I've had live streams with and chats, like, they've been very open to discussion. And it's weird. It is just a weird phenomenon. Like people tend to collaborate with each other in their say political ideological spheres, and some seem more outgoing than others. And what some might call it outgoing and others might call it antagonistic, depending on how you view those people. And so if you were to, you go on Alex Jones, just because of the way the world has been framed now. Incidentally, would you do a podcast with Alex Jones?
Yes,
if it came up?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it would be a sin not to. And he's such an extremist. Like, yeah. I mean, why not?
It's funny when I talked with Robert, and Robert says, like Alex Jones on a personal level is among the nicest people
I've heard that.
he knows. I mean, and I know Robert Barnes likes him, and Robert Barnes is not. I would say like
I'd like to have Robert Barnes on.
All right, let's.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, that's a good idea. The no, it's like Robert Barnes is, people call it biased, people call it tied up with, but
sure.
Robert Barnes is connected with Alex Jones. He's on band.television or whatever it is, where I did a live stream with Robert, and I didn't fully appreciate it. It doesn't change anything. It's fun. I would talk with anybody pretty much anywhere, and I was on band television, which is Alex Jones's channel. And it's interesting. And then afterwards, like, you immediately start asking yourself this question, like, what are going to be the repercussions of having had a civil discussion with somebody without necessarily endorsing their beliefs, just because of what society has now perceived that to mean. And it is the funny thing is it is the chilling effect on discussion, which only further divides it further divides the camps, and it further divides society. It drives me nuts.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm the bravest person on the planet. Part of the reason of Alex Jones is because he is such an extreme. Now, one guy I would have more trouble with, like Stefan Molyneux. And there's just a quality to him that I don't care for, or Jared Taylor. I don't know if I'd have them on or not. I don't know if that makes sense. But
so that is the question. Who did I ask? Oh, I asked Robert Barnes. He says, I'll represent people who I disagree with, but I won't necessarily represent people who I fundamentally disagree with or fundamentally dislike on an ideological basis. And I guess it's a question of like defending them on those issues, those ideological issues, or defending them on other issues, but them holding those beliefs. So I don't know enough about Taylor Molyneux. I know the reputations. I know I've seen videos before I even knew who these people were, and it's only now that I've the part of YouTube where I make content, the names come up, and I've seen more and more of their content. Although not Jared Taylor, actually.
Jared Taylor, he's a racist. I mean, he calls himself a race realist, but he's up there in that crowd, one of the original alt-right people, and he's very, very clear that he believes all the races in the world should live in different areas. And I'm just like, well, you're pretty clear on what it is. And I don't know. I just don't know if there's much for me to mine there. I don't agree with it.
It's another issue, is another discussion is, if there's nothing to do but repeat what has already been made clear, it won't be not a meaningful discussion, but it won't add any insight into the individuals. What you can mine out of McAfee, and the other thing is what you can mine out of McAfee, and what that might turn into in terms of an eye-opening discovery of an individual that some people,
or it could be boring. And that's another fear I have, is that he may just be closed up and super careful that day and annoyed with me and just shut down. So that's a fear. He might be like, yep, I'm running. Yep. Start just answering yes, no on questions. So much it's so dependent on my ability to really communicate. And somebody in the comments put out building rapport. I really do have to work very hard to build rapport, and I do care about every guest. But yeah, it's possible that McAfee could fall completely flat.
And this is another interesting. I mean, this is an existential question. Is do you want, what is the purpose of life, and what is the purpose of anything? Do you want to get noticed? Is notoriety a bigger threat than anonymity, or what's the bigger risk? Actually, how I should say it is getting famous, or is getting publicity for the wrong reasons a greater risk than total anonymity? And and when you do these interviews, like there's the risk that it goes somewhere where you didn't intend it for it to go. But in reality, when people create things and they want people to see them, the biggest fear is that it just fizzles out and doesn't amount to anything, or it doesn't amount to any viewership. In your podcast, what are your numbers like? Like how what's the reach? And if it doesn't pan out on YouTube as a platform, you'll still have the reach on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I have more reach on the podcast, obviously, right now, but even that is growing. Everything is very challenging in this world, like you've seen. I freely admit I'm under 300. Hopefully, I'll be over 300, folks. Subscribe. But you've been at this 7 years, 8 years now?
Yeah, 2014. But it's been a curve in terms of my knowledge and my purpose.
Yeah, now the average downloads for a podcast are 100. Well, they were 145. It's probably about 100 a month now to be above the median. 100, not thousands. It's not like the big YouTube channels. And you've started a podcast too. I think you didn't get as many numbers out the gate as you thought, did you?
No, I didn't care about that. It's just the numbers were not the issue for me. It was just bandwidth. It was
time.
It was another platform to learn about it. It took too long. It was not necessarily value added in any way, because the majority of the people who watch are on YouTube don't necessarily care for the podcast. But it was time bandwidth. Couldn't do it.
Yeah, and it's a different animal too. Podcasting is a different experience, and that's one of the challenges. I am, doing the video interviews, but I'm also very cognizant that most people, or many people, will be listening. So it's I don't know. I'm learning as I go. I'm 2 years in, but learning.
Yeah, well, that's so my problem, my fear, my concerns, the reality of social media, and I guess it's the same everywhere in terms of retaining relevance or being relevant, and you get everything's a plateau. You get to another plateau, you get to another level, and then what do you have to do to maintain relevance there? And it's looking at celebrities, and you realize sort of why celebrities, who get to certain levels through their music, then they get to somewhere else through, then they're giving speeches talking about blowing up the White House, and the push and the pull, or the envelope that people have to keep pushing, which I hate, because it tends to eventually push them off the ledge where they're pushing the envelope. Is
Charlie Sheen. We're all going to become Charlie Sheen, is what you're saying.
Or Jake Paul, or everybody at some in order to retain relevance has to push the envelope beyond what they even feel to be appropriate for themselves. And that's where I'm always reflecting and making sure that I'm not doing that, because I don't want to be antagonistic just for the sake of continuing to grow. And I don't want to be antagonistic, period. I don't want to do anything just for the sake of growing.
When you have a strong family, I mean, really, if you think about it, you are well-grounded. You and I aren't young. I mean, we're talking about, well, Charlie Sheen's a nut. And then you mentioned Jake Paul. What is he, 20-something?
Yeah, so they have no guidance, no.
Well, his father's a nut too.
I don't know who's his father.
No, his Greg Paul, I believe. I saw a thing on them because I was just looking at YouTubers. I think Shane Dawson did a whole series on him, and his father is living vicariously through his son as a YouTuber, and he's one of those hardcore coaching people who pitted him and Logan against each other all the time, and it's just total toxic stew. And they're really, really young, and you've lived a full life. I mean, you have children of your own. You have multiple siblings, and your parents around. They're very stable. So fortunately, you have enough people in your life, and I feel the same way as my family is, who will mock me every time I turn around. Well, keep me grounded.
This is the funny thing is, someone just says, Viva, he called you old. There's a certain thing that comes, obviously mature. There's a certain maturity that comes with age. Which is probably, let me put that on a coffee cup. The funny thing is, not necessarily believing in a God per se. I always say, I wouldn't want my father being ashamed of anything I've done.
Right.
Which is, I guess, yeah, it's the thing about having had a certain upbringing. The flip side is,
or your children. I mean, can you imagine if they're like, oh my God, their dad? I mean, That's got to keep you grounded.
That's an interesting. I mean, that's an interesting thing. Also, the children, the impression of the children. But for me, it is just the perception of the cosmos. Like, how am I going to be remembered?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be remembered for. I don't want to be remembered as the person who pushed a controversy just for the sake of personal growth and who left the world in a worse place than it was when he came in. But then when it comes to people growing and what they have to do to stay relevant and to continue to be thought of when people think of things or when people go to YouTube to click, that's where that is the risk, where if you don't keep pushing that envelope, you fall into irrelevance, and that's almost more soul crushing than being popular for the wrong reasons.
Well, that's why I'm trying to go with the slow burn aspect. As silly as that sounds, I would rather go slowly and plateau and plateau and plateau, because part of that chasing is when you do an artificial gain or you do some stunt that gets everybody following you. Then what do? You have to count, you have to follow up with another stunt. So if you do a much slower growth, I feel that people will be there longer because, well, that is you. It's like they like you or they don't.
I talk a lot about Howard Stern, but it was sort of the Howard Stern growth where he did. Well, I mean, at first he was just exploited for the sake of being exploited,
Sure.
which it was what it was. But he has grown and he's sort of moved. He's matured in a way, and not in other ways. And I'm trying to think, the actors the celebrities, musicians who have had, who stayed relevant.
Tom Selleck.
Say it again.
Tom Selleck, the guy who played Magnum.
I know Tom. People often tell me I look like Tom Selleck. Sure.
Well, there you go.
If you
so handsome,
Barney.
But he's a guy who lives on a 70-acre ranch. You never hear about him in the news. He just is there or he's not there. Paul Newman comes to mind as a celebrity who just was so dialed in.
Yeah. So I bring up the comments. Just I am 40 years. I'm just going to be 41. Hopefully I can celebrate my birthday.
He's much younger than I am. Okay, I take it back. He's completely young.
I think it was with Ezra Levant where I said I made the similar comment just because it is weird. But when you're new to social media, but you know people who've been on social media for a long time, you tend to think they're much older than you or much older than they actually are. Yeah, so 40 years old. I was sworn in 2007 for bar. I just saw a question here trying to do the math of my age. So yeah, I started practicing at 27. Don't forget Jussie Smollett.
Yeah, perfect. There you go. Stunt, something, get attention, stay relevant.
Yeah. Oh, the question is now. The other question is, would you interview Jussie Smollett? That would be
Absolutely.
So that's where I would have an issue. It's like I would do it as well. I would do it to try to get to the truth, and if I felt like it was just I was being exploited to perpetuate,
then I'd spike it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Well, I think we have a very similar framework, Eric. Now, so the question is this also, God, the social media and the need to dichotomize people as good or bad, as right or wrong, as an aggregate with no nuance. You're older than me. You've been around for longer. Is this new, or is this just a new materialization of something that is as old as time?
I think it's always been there. It's just magnified now, so it's in our face. But we're lazy. I mean, nuance gets lost. If it can fit on a bumper sticker, it can be remembered. And I actually went through that, and I'll probably see. Okay, we'll start some stuff up here real quickly. My wife is going a little crazy, but I do wonder about Sweden. I think we need to pay attention to what's going on in Sweden right now. And I think their numbers are very interesting. I don't know if they're going to hold up. They're not going to hold up. But I pointed that out in a comment that, well, we will find out if the lockdown is effective or not. And we do have Sweden as an example or a counterpoint. And they pointed out immediately, oh, well, look, yeah, their death rate is 12%. I'm like, okay, yes, according to cases out there, it is 12%. But here, let's look at the Johns Hopkins survey and look at the number of deaths per 100,000 people. And those are, I believe it was like 19. and the US, I think, is like around 16. So that to me is a more relevant statistic, because we know people who died, they either died or they didn't die. And we know there's population or there's not a population. And that's easier to track the numbers. They came back and said, yeah, see, it says 12%.
Yeah, it's
so nuance is lost there, because guess what? They have a number. It's 12% of the case. There we go.
Yeah, well, no, there's well, first, what is it? Numbers never lie. Or there's an argument about this.
Oh, yeah, liar. Figures never lie, but liars figure.
It's impossible to have a discussion also because, yeah, 12%. I think 12% is only based on confirmed cases with death. So
Correct.
how many? Who are they testing? If they're only testing people in the hospital, obviously that number is going to be skewed. Then you go to the aggregate, just the total number. How many deaths? What's the population?
Mm-hmm.
And then the question is, oh, well, but their deaths are going up faster than other countries' deaths are going up, So, and you try to have these discussions on Twitter.
You want my parents to die? You don't care?
Yeah, no, you want
there you go. I mean, and it's an immediate shutdown. It's like, no, I don't think anybody wants anybody to die. Everybody's so concerned about this. It's like, what if I tell you to go drive to the store? I want you to die because you could die in a car accident. Nobody wants anybody to die, and when you throw that out there, it's very frustrating.
That's where I have my internal. By the way, do you hear my dog?
No.
Okay, good, because he's going to town on himself, and and I don't know if you can hear it through the mic. That's where I always have I go through the mental calculation as to whether or not I engage in the discussion, because if I get the feeling that people are just antagonizing for the sake of it, there's no point doing it. I'm just going to pull my own hair out. If I get the feeling that they are sincerely held, they hold sincere beliefs and they're just expressing them badly, I try to engage. And then if I see where it degenerates in terms of discourse,
right.
And then if I feel that they're totally authentic and willing, I don't care how much we disagree with each other, I'll do it. But the problem is, you try to do this on social media and there's just no plausible way, because you're, first of all, as the interlocutor who's engaging with whatever 5,000 people on Twitter, 100,000 people on YouTube, you get bombarded with everyone's potentially oversimplified characterization of something you said, and you have
pile-ons too, which you got to be careful of.
Say that again.
Well, you have to be careful of pile-ons too.
Oh,
like your audience can pile on somebody that you may be wanting to have a discussion with, and you have to be like, whoa, no, calm down.
Yeah, or they pile on me because
that's fine.
So, and on the video that I put up yesterday, somebody commented, they heard what Trump said. They thought that's what they interpreted that way. Mm-hmm. And I noticed, not a pile on at all, because I think I generally have very respectful subscribers. I noticed, so it was the typical sort of social media argumentation, just trying to snap comebacks, mischaracterize, etc. And then I just said, thank you for being honest. It's interesting, and I do wonder if your interpretation could have been affected by however you feel about the subject that you're interpreting to begin with. But where I noticed it, where I learned it, the hard way is, I said there's certain discussions I'll just avoid because they don't go places good, because they're too nuanced. And when I said I disagreed with Dan Crenshaw and about lending firearms. And people, and it's an interesting thing, because it's my theory of whistling. That's why people hate whistling, because people only hear the whistle. They don't hear the music that you hear in your head to support the whistling. And so when you make a statement, all the people hear is the statement, and they don't know the framework that you have in your mind to sort of contextualize that statement. And so everyone's like, so you're telling me what I can do with my, you're telling me you're an anti, some people said, I don't like a Canadian, tell me what I can do with my guns. I say, and it's like, under no circumstances was I saying that. In fact, my nuance.
What's funny is we actually disagree on this, which is cool.
Which one?
Well, your whole opinion about loaning firearms.
Well, my only opinion was I disagreed with Crenshaw in the context of the tweet with AOC, which was he opposed background checks because then he couldn't lend firearms to whomever. And
a lot of that comes out of the fact that he is a soldier. And I don't know if you know this, but a lot of PTSD is considering a disqualified condition. And many soldiers have PTSD and they come out of it perfectly fine. But because it's ever been on the record, and by the way, those are his friends who he would trust with his life, his family's life, everything else. So I'm trying to look from his background experiences on that as well. So he could not lend it to his friends, his brothers, who he trusts beyond anyone else on the planet.
Well,
that's a context. and nuance for you.
Yeah, that is it. And one which is too difficult, by the way. Real Bambuka says to Hunley, MOS.
Oh, embarrassingly, I was a cook to start, which is horrible. And then I changed to 88 Hotel, which is cargo loading ships, because it was my way to get out of both Fort Irwin and the job. The only place I could do cargo was in Fort Story or Fort Eustis, Virginia. So I learned how to play the system.
Okay, so we have a new member, Forced
name change.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the channel, Forced Name Change. So, welcome as a member, which is I send out sneak peeks of videos to members who get like maybe 3 hours of extra viewing before I make a video public. No, so that was it. So, like, I wanted to give an example to show that I'm, I can critically assess someone's opinion, who I think I like as a person, and I can critically agree with someone whose opinion I disagree with as a person. I disagree with as a person, that being Bill Maher. And so everyone reads that one broad statement through their not say blinders, but through their mental framework, through everything that they have playing in the background to interpret it. And it makes discussion impossible, because you get people mischaracterizing, you get people bringing the discussion to something else that was not being discussed. In terms of what can I do with you tell me what to do with my firearms. And it's I'm very critical of the gun laws in Canada, because I think they're prohibitively severe in terms of requirements and in terms of penalties, which I've said before, it's almost as though they want to criminalize ownership and not legalize ownership. But true. So then when it came to the Crenshaw, I said it, and I wanted to clarify on it. And it just leads into a debate that you can't have on social media, just because of the nature of social media. And I thought, and then and on Twitter, you just like, I think these divisions have always been there, or these techniques have always been there, but it's just so much easier to do it now on social media, and it's just at the click of a thumb. Where plus, I think Twitter, just by its design, is intended to make it easy to communicate, but not easy to understand.
Well, there's psychology has been done on that. I mean, anger spreads faster than any other kind of tweet. So the whole system is designed on magnifying tweets. What gets magnified? Anger.
Twitter is the worst platform ever to have a conversation, period. Yeah, I mean, you gotta agree to give up forever.
Yeah, but they sum that in a perfect tweet.
Yeah, true.
Just straightforward to the point.
Oh, that's how I get my information. You think you're going to tell me that I should ban Twitter now, and I can't be on Twitter? Like, it's so easy to fight, and Twitter makes it so easy to fight.
Yeah, but you know what I'm noticing, though, is you've hated Twitter, but you yourself have been on there more and more and more. And as many people as you have following you, Twitter's an ideal platform for you, because you can be short without it being insulting. And when I say I hate Twitter, occasionally I hate it because of what I'm not going to say like I'm a victim, like what it gets me to do. Occasionally I do. First of all, I hate it because every now and again you do tweet something I'm not going to make like a Roseanne Barr tweet, but every now and again I'll tweet an article. I'm never going to tweet like something like that, but I will share something that I know is only going to get people who don't believe in it angry. And that's when I sort of regret myself on Twitter, but it's forgivable regret. The one thing I just hate about Twitter is I tweet something and I don't read it in the way that someone else reads it. Right.
And I can understand how they misread it as an insult, or they misread it as an attack, or they misread it as a statement. And I literally had to say to someone just recently, "You're misreading my tweet. I wasn't saying it ironically or sarcastically. I was saying..."
I think I saw that. Yeah. And you had a bunch of typos in your explanation.
Oh God, yeah, the typos. And it's just so easy to misinterpret. And now I sit there like every time and say, am I trying to, is this tweet going to be read as trying to shame someone's opinion who doesn't agree with it? Is this tweet going to be misread as an insult? Am I saying something that I don't even know is politically offensive in this tweet? And this goes back to our original discussion before our podcast, which is like, how much eggshells are we walking on because society is just unforgiving, looking to pounce and to pigeonhole and to cancel anybody who might make who says something that can be interpreted in that manner.
Well, there are professional victims out there for sure. And I think at your growth point, you just kind of have to accept there's some of them there and just blow them off.
I have great difficulty doing that. I have great difficulty doing that because going back to the Crenshaw discussion,
sure.
If I get the sincere belief that I actually genuinely insulted and I say reasonably insulted, because some people say, oh, you know, you okay, genuinely reasonably insulted someone, I will feel bad. Like, I'll feel bad, and I will obsess over it for an unhealthy period of time. And so I may not be in the right, you know, I may have picked the wrong place to try to, you know, build a presence, because it'll happen a lot. So, but it also, it keeps me sensitive. But but then there's just the people who I'm convinced don't believe what they're doing, but they do it because it just makes for engagement online, and people enjoy getting a rise out of people.
Oh, I mean, you have trolls and you have professional victims. Aren't they kind of two sides of the same coin?
Yeah, they're definitely the professional victims. It's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't actually believe that some people believe that they are victims, but it's easy to build say relevance. It's easy to demonize someone. The easiest way to do it is to make it look like they just insulted you. And so,
well, what I hate, actually, on that, the ones I hate are the quote white knights and those types, who they're the ones who get offended for somebody else. Those to me are the most obnoxious. Well, there's some people who are genuine victims and they get hurt. I understand that. But yeah, the ones who are out there looking for controversy to jump in. Did you hear what he said to you?
Well, it's
like your person who said that I called you old. How dare they?
Well, that was total tongue in cheek, but
I know that.
It's an amazing thing. Abraham Lincoln said it about lawyers. Like, it is like lawyers scrupulously looking through public records to try to find defects. It's unethical in law, and yeah, people do it. I'm going to get Bambuga says, or if you're me, how can I make this compliment sound like an insult? No, I mean, that's pretty much what. And we had an incident in Canada with the pipeline protests, where you have people protesting in the name of other people, and then the other people are like, whoa, first of all, the majority of us actually support this idea, and now I'm not. Now I'm going to get in trouble for like taking a position. This is like, I looked into it because I said I don't understand the pipeline protests. I didn't understand the subject matter. And then the first video I did, I actually did the video on the wrong pipeline.
Oh, there you go.
A serious, very quick erratum, or it was immaterial to the substance. It was just there were two different pipelines. But yeah, you have people protesting for Aboriginal rights who are against the pipeline, but then you have the communities themselves, the vast majority, saying, don't protest for us. We like this. It brings wealth, it brings jobs, and if it's done properly, we support these things. And it's like on YouTube and mostly on Twitter, you're just like, did you hear this? Yeah. How are you not offended? Let's get the mob going after this person who said something that didn't even insult the subject, but.
Well, nobody asked the subject, and that is a great point. We have that here. Interesting you brought that up, Aboriginal, but we have what are known as Native Americans, but they usually call themselves, guess what?
First Nations.
Indians.
Well,
I'm from Arizona. I knew Navajo, I knew Apache, and they're like, I'm an Indian. They just didn't care. Everybody else was offended for them. And they were saying, well, we have problems. We have actual problems on our tribe. Can you worry a little bit more about our kids having a diabetes problem, or actual problems, not what a football team is called?
No, or the butter. I forget now, the butter where they just removed the emblem of the butter in the
Land
States.
Lakes, probably?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, I've never seen that butter before, and people were asking me to do a video on it, and I said, like, there's very little that I can offer of any insight for whatever knowledge or experience I have. It's just, where does it end, and why do you do it, and what are going to be the effects of it? We seem to be living more in an era of get woke, go broke than people actually appreciate this type of what I might call hypersensitivity, but it might be fabricated sensitivity, because nobody's really outraged. There's maybe 1% that are outraged, but they might have a much more vocal platform than the 99% who are not outraged.
Or that girl who wore the prom dress, and it was a Chinese traditional dress. That's a good example. And all the Chinese, they said, wow, that's wonderful. She looks beautiful, and that's representing our culture and celebrating and looking up to it.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure that is just the rage culture of social media, where if Twitter did not exist, that would never have happened. If social media did not exist, it would never happen. Can you imagine, like, just the analogy for whatever technology exists at the time? Someone took a picture and wrote an article and put it in the local newspaper. It would be viewed so much more differently. And it's just a question of what gets clicks on social media and people working the platform for what it is. Now, hold on, I got Jason McConnell.
That's a good name.
Viva Fry.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all. We might have to. I'm sure she has no incentive to live in the shadow of Viva Fry, but that's really not bad at all. That's actually.
Hey, by the way, did you get your vlog license plate like we talked?
Well, I did. I got a custom plate, and it's beautiful. Yeah, it's such a silly thing to make someone happy, but it makes me happy, and yeah, it's done. And plus, I no longer have a company plate, so I'm not going to get the same ticket that I got for not renewing my license, or not renewing my whatever. There's an annual registration fee to have a company plate, like $350, and if you don't renew it, $400 penalty. Real Bambuga says, I'm offended on behalf of white knights. As a proud troll myself, I cannot continue to exist without their idiocy. I am so offended by this. There are always what is the word I'm looking for? Opposing forces in the world where you're going to have parasites, you're going to have other animals to make use of the parasites.
Sure.
Mandatory carry. Nice to see you again, Mandatory. At work, cam watch. This is a meandering stream, and mostly I want to. Eric shared me with the world, and now I want everyone to see Eric, and
awesome. Thank you.
We promised to have this discussion a while back, and now it's just fitting that we have this discussion about the hypersensitivity of discussion on social media. It's funny. I was not comfortable to have this discussion when we did the stream. I mean, I've been sort of getting used to not the next plateau, but the necessary consequences of certain discussion. And now I sort of feel, I've gotten sensitized to having this discussion about, I'm still hypersensitive about not insulting people unwittingly or even deliberately, even if I wanted to, but it is the nature.
Intent should count for everything. And that's something that's lost. I mean, people who intend to insult are kind of jerks. People who don't intend to, well, they didn't intend to. People should pay attention.
No, I don't even want to talk about the examples because they might be too controversial to even talk about. But like, yeah, people who say things and then people pounce and get them fired and ruin their lives, and it's a game to people on social media. They don't know. Nobody really regards,
especially those who didn't even know they said something wrong. They just were like, "Oh."
No, but then you have the people saying that's even more insidious. It's institutionalized. They don't even know how offensive it is because of privilege. I hear my car making an alarm now. We may. Okay, we'll see. I slotted 90 minutes for this because the kids are going to go nuts sooner than later. Married? Gotcha. Okay, there we go. It's off now. Woke is just white man's burden by another name. And we got Real Bambuga. Okay, Viva Fry. If the wife takes the name Viva Fry, will you sue for copyright infringement? Well, unfortunately, I think I screwed up on my my trademark application in the States for vlog. I haven't gotten it in Canada yet, which is why I got screwed in the States, because the States required foreign registration of the copyright of the trademark. And I'm still waiting in Canada, but ultimately, what the heck am I going to do? I'm not suing anybody for using vlog. I might just, it'll be good publicity. It'll be good content. So what is first of all, I mean, what's your plan now? Like overall social media, what is the plan for Unstructured?
Podcast will keep going, and just trying to build the YouTube channel. I'm trying to use the live streams to help amplify the podcast, so everything kind of feeds into itself as a full platform. Uncivil Law, I want to have him on or talk to him.
Oh, do it. So Uncivil Law, for anybody who doesn't know, but everybody does know, I think he's got the blue wrench. He got me to give it to him, and Uncivil, I have to ask you if you've ever banned anybody, actually, because I have never. I think I've maybe blocked one person, but that's why that's my concern, is that the moderators, the blue wrenches, are going to do something that I might not otherwise do, and I would be.
Is that what it is? I didn't know what a blue wrench was. Yeah. I tried to act smart.
Because everyone tells me to get moderators because the Russian sex bots were infiltrating the chat for a few.
That could be fun.
No, not these Russian bots. All they do is they cut someone else's comment and post it in their own, and it looks like it's a legitimate comment. And I'm sitting there reading these comments from like Katrina Sexbot 607. So uncivil law, for anybody who doesn't know, another YouTube lawyer, Nate Brody's another YouTube lawyer. Ian Korth. I feel like I want to tell everybody, all the lawyers, so that we can have a good community. But he's got his own channel, and uncivil law, do it. It would be great. Uncivil law, incidentally, Eric, for your own knowledge, we did a stream the other day, is exquisitely knowledgeable on Second Amendment issues in the States. Exquisitely knowledgeable.
Well, he's knowledgeable about the whole Constitution from my side. Isn't he a constitutional lawyer?
He
sounds like it.
Intellectual property, but no, extremely knowledgeable on all law. But we had our stream on certain issues really took a level of detail that I was not anticipating. So that's very cool. No, so it's a weird thing. I've worked into getting comfortable with the idea that we're going to discuss things that are going to upset the people who want to get upset by virtue of the fact that someone doesn't agree with them on deeply held beliefs. I still want to build a world where people can actually not demonize someone who may disagree with them on their most deeply held core beliefs. And I hope I can do that in a way by, taking it from the right sometimes when I don't agree with them, and taking it from the left. I take it from the left a lot. It seems like, even though I espouse a lot of beliefs which I know would be more left than right, it seems like.
Well, you're Canadian, isn't that your nature? Especially French Canadian. I mean,
no,
you have to be.
I'm an Anglo Canadian, but no, it's no, but yeah, it's just it. It's like you're gonna. I realize, like, I'm going to upset somebody, but I'm going to upset somebody by doing what I'm doing, but I don't want to do what I'm doing just to upset somebody. I guess that's the best way to put it. But it's like walking on eggshells. Every comment, every time I respond, I accidentally, for anybody who's watching, I accidentally shared to my story on Instagram, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Someone DM'd me and tagged me in their Instagram, and I don't
know how that works either.
So I get the DM. I did something, obviously, which shared it to my story, but it was about my video from yesterday. But by sharing, it looks like I endorsed the message, although the message was a summary of my video. But things like that, like you can inadvertently, by when I heart a comment, if that is a channel that may have controversial stuff, am I endorsing that? Is someone going to say I endorsed it? If I'm on a platform that has offensive material, am I going to be said to have endorsed that offensive material? This is the world in which we live, and to navigate it is a very difficult thing.
Well, I think you're doing very well.
Touch wood. Yeah, we'll see. So far, so good. I haven't been kicked off YouTube. I haven't been demonetized as a channel.
Yeah, not completely. Just argue at the different videos.
I'm going to do a funny video about what I think is the soft censorship, that last video being demonetized, because the reason for which that video was demonetized is so...
the way they wrote it is like you were telling people to do it.
No, it was even worse than that. It was that the video that I did either was a prank that was dangerous, or was talking about a video that was trending that contained that. But mine was an analysis of a video of people talking. It wasn't even like, it was so one step removed. But is the word obtuse? I don't know if the word is obtuse, but the way it's drafted is so, and I guess ambiguous is a better word. That it doesn't mean anything except for, I don't even know how to appeal the appeal, because
it was a human. It specifically said that a human did it. So good luck.
Talking about the media's response to a press conference, and maybe it was Piers Morgan's tweet, which I'm always reluctant. Not reluctant. I don't know the level of self-censorship I have to go through. I wanted to include Piers Morgan's tweet, knowing that was a firecracker in the in the video, because it's just I could see that being the reason why. Oh, a new member. It's a Steelman podcast. Awesome. Podcast competition. This I say that tongue in cheek, because there is no competition in an NC. It's actually, I genuinely believe that the rising tide will lift everybody, and not one podcast competing with another. Where was it? That was a long meandering thought, but so you saw Trump's press conference. You saw his words. How did you take? What's your take on that?
He did himself no favors, because while he did not specifically say it, somebody could read that into it, and that's on him.
See, that's that. And I said, it's a funny thing, because like I said as much in the video where I said, if you're talking to a press that is perpetually hostile, in the same way you're talking to a lawyer that is perpetually hostile, don't give them the ammunition. I mean, if the press were forgiving, we would have never heard about it. And that's sort of the double-edged sword of this, or where people are going to say I'm sucking and blowing. If the press were forgiving, we would have never known that he said what he said. The press being what it is, he said what he said. It was a stupid thing to say in the sense that he's talking to a hostile press, and
it was unclear. I mean, again, it really, I'm not going to say he implied it, but he left enough in there that it can be inferred.
I think even if someone could think that, I don't think it could, because the idea of killing the bacteria, that's exactly what anybody wants to do when people protect the person. Even if I said someone could interpret it that way, the question would then be: is there reasonable that anyone's going to go and do what the media in their headlines said was said? And that's where if you didn't have a hostile media, no one would ever know he said it. You have a hostile media, and so they amplify the misunderstanding that I do think they are creating. But even if I accept that it could be misunderstood, they're amplifying it to such a degree that
they could be causing it. Ironically, they could be saying, because they said he said it, that people will interpret, especially those who hate the media, who are very, I don't know, Darwin Award winners in waiting, will say, "Oh, Trump said it," because the media said he said that. So there is a very real danger of the media causing it to happen. What is it you said about behind every fear is a wish?
Yeah, that was it. It was. I don't exactly know how David meant it. That's what I feared. Like the media comes and says, "Oh my gosh, it might do this," and in so saying that, I mean, there's a part of me that feels that if one or two people did it, their wish would come true.
Oh yeah. Well, look how they treated the aquarium stuff. I mean, I think it's very clear that Trump never said people go to a pet store, buy aquarium cleaner, and take it. Well, I don't think anybody can actually do that. But
and Steven Crowder, for whatever it's worth, and incidentally, I didn't, when I put the black screen up in my last video, it's Steven Crowder did a bit where he made some hypotheses as to what might have actually happened in that circumstance.
Oh yeah.
And being a lawyer, I damn well going to be certain that if I'm going to not hypothesize, if I'm going to say something like that, it had better be in Fox or CNN, or it better be on the mainstream media, so someone cannot blame me for being the one that said it, and I can say, look, that's where the credible.
Right, he's a parody, so he hides behind that too.
So I would never say it, but there's some theories as to what might have happened there. But yeah, the funny thing is, and someone posted this article on Twitter, is they said, look, an article just came out that after Trump said what he said, they reported that 100 calls came into a poison control center. And I said, that's that. And the headline said spike in calls to poison control. And I said, okay. So I read the article. And again, like I want to do a breakdown of this article, but I don't want to push the button too much with YouTube. But the article says spike in the headlines. It refers to a number in the body and doesn't have a comparative number. And then in the body of the article says how even before Trump's comments, there was an increase in calls to poison control, or an increased exposure to bleach, which I have no trouble believing, because I have no doubt that people are using bleach to bleach surfaces because everybody has gotten so traumatized. I mean, we're walking around with isopropyl and spritzy cans in the house, sort of, tongue-in-cheek humor, but I have no people have gone overboard and have exposed themselves. But even in this article, which is supposed to incriminate the negative effects of what Trump is alleged to have said, they note that even before there's been a massive increase, which is probably contextual.
Well, this happens all the time. You could take so many articles and you read the headline, and then third or fourth paragraph will almost completely contradict the headline, which drives me insane because nobody reads beyond the first paragraph anyway. So they'll have a headline that's the supposed thesis. Then they write a innocuous first paragraph or two, and people get bored. And then they don't read the part that contradicts what the headline said.
It was. I mean, I did a couple of videos on it now, and it is crazy. It's like the exercise you have to go through to make sure that you're not getting misinformed. Oh, and so here's another good example of, the real Bambunga made this joke in the video, and Bambunga is a member. He's supports the channel, and I'm thankful for it. And I'm like, so I typically give hearts to all member comments because I want to show my appreciation. But if I heart this comment, is that going to come back to haunt me in the future? Like, humor translates very poorly on the internet.
Sure.
And And then, and someone wants to say, how could
Easy
you
answer. If somebody hates you, it will.
Yeah, they say, how could you possibly like a comment that makes light of X, Y, and Z? And there's very little room for humor when someone has decided they don't like you.
Well, this video here, okay, but this live stream, you posted earlier today. You had a thumbs down immediately with like 4 or 5 thumbs ups, like the second you had it out there. And I'm going, okay, so nobody's even seen the content. Oh, well, maybe it's my hater who's coming.
I was thinking, I'm just going to go now and see how many. I noticed it disappeared. So there's only 2 thumbs down now. I noticed it had disappeared before the stream started. So maybe someone was on their phone and hit the wrong button. But no, there's nothing wrong with haters to the extent that it remains within the realm of what is legal activity. Like
back to Howard Stern private parts, right?
Well, no, it's like, yeah, you will have haters. It's fine to have haters, and I don't mind engaging with haters. And I don't even mind the thumbs down. You're going to have one. It's always
sure.
frustrating to get that first one, because I had one video, I think it got to like 1,000 thumbs up before the first thumbs down. And I was like, oh god, it was an amazing run we were on. But yeah, no, so that thumbs down disappeared. But no, it's like this the crazy thing is there's very little room for humor. Sarcasm can be interpreted so badly, and it makes you. So if any member notices that I've hearted a bunch of other comments but not one, it might be because it might be too controversial for me to heart without risking it costing me everything.
So we're back to, well, we're trying to take a stand, but we're really both cowards at heart.
Well, when everyone, so people accuse me of that, and I like to think of have you seen the movie Colors? You've obviously seen Colors.
Oh, in the 80s?
Yeah, Robert Duvall, one of the Penns. Was it?
Sean Penn and Robert Duvall.
One of the best movies, as far as I'm concerned, of all time. Although I don't put it on my list, but there's the one sentence from it where Robert Duvall says to Sean Penn, the story of the bulls, and it's a papa bull and a baby bull on a hill. And I can't even say this because people might find it as an offensive analogy.
Oh, yeah.
The idea is the father bull, and the bull says, let's run down. Hey, look at all those cows over there. Let's run down and make babies with one of them. And then the papa bull says, no, let's walk down and make babies with all of them.
Right.
And so it's perfectly analogous. It's like you don't change the system by going in full throttle and end up getting discredited or getting kicked off.
Sure.
And so it's a dance. It's a dance to some extent. And also I'm not trying to be controversial just to make a point. I want to make thought out points. But
well, we were talking about that earlier too. I mean, look what happened with Lenny Bruce. Great. We all celebrate the dead guy. I mean, he was so important as a comedian, etc. His life was miserable and he died of an overdose. Who wants to die on that hill?
No, I mean, that's it. And I'm trying to think of people, like I'm looking at James Woods versus who's the director who's $1 Million Baby, Clint Eastwood. Like there are different ways of making a point. And I mean, I think James Woods is lucky in that he was so big that he can get away with it, but anyone else does that.
But he's still not being hired. James Woods hasn't acted for a while, and I think he's even said that. Gary Sinise is another right-wing guy who works all the time, and he manages to find a way to get his points across and keep a good rep.
I think. What's the other one? The father of Angelina Jolie.
Voight. Voight's pretty edgy.
So he's pretty edgy, and it's the same thing. And another one I follow because I like hearing what people have to say. Chuck Woolery. And what I do find is that, like Steve Martin said, people eventually become characters of themselves, and it's not always a good thing. And it's important to bear that in mind. You can do it in such a way that people don't listen, and you can do it in such a way that it ends up hurting your own cause and hurting your ability to make any change.
Mm-hmm.
And if I make no other change, I just want to get people to be able to go back to having civil discourse on touchy issues in a manner that actually allows for common understanding. Oh, that was a comment that drove me crazy. Joshua Cornelius, I'm going to get to the super chat in a second. Someone wrote this comment in the video, right? In response to some of the comments on my community post about the Dan Crenshaw, I said in one of the comments, well, I think we all agree on certain things. And then a bunch of people's like, oh, that's lawyer talk. Moral, what does it say? Plurality,
ambiguity,
right?
Or ambiguity.
Well, yeah, I'm invoking numbers of people who agree to show that I'm right. And it's like, that was exactly the type of thing that frustrates me, because I was not invoking the number of people agreeing with me to show that I was right. I was trying to illustrate a commonality that we can all agree on certain things, and then we can move from there to like sort of get to a better understanding. And that was one of the comments that hurt me, because I felt that it was a sincere misunderstanding from the people who were reading it. But I can't, there's only so much time in the day where I cannot go and try to like respond to every one of them. But that was one of the ones. Misunderstanding on social media, just given the nature of the discussion. We all agree on certain things. Well, I wasn't saying it to say that I was right. I was just saying it to show that we have
and find a baseline and say, okay, we all agree here, and then we deviate.
Joshua Cornelius says, fake news is nothing new. Thomas Jefferson hated the dishonest newspaper industry while being the champion of the free press. News became corrupt at the moment man learned how to lie.
Oh, I could go on about the election of 1800 for a while. And Joshua would probably agree that yellow journalism, which it was called forever, has been around. And we're actually back to what journalism was in the 1800s, etc., with the muckraking, yellow journalism, and whatnot. But what happened was that there used to be two papers in every town, and they'd fight each other. And now, unfortunately, all the papers have been shut down, so you only have one side doing the muckraking. Hey, we got a fan. How are you doing?
This might be the cue. We might have to wind down now. But
definitely.
So, no, and yellow journalism, I mean, it's a term that comes up a lot, and I've heard it a lot. And I think this is nothing new. This is,
sure,
it's thousands of years old. It's just, and it's been accelerated and concentrated on social media. But the flip side is, the social media and the internet has exposed it as well, which is sort of the beauty, the risks and the benefits of social media.
Definitely.
Okay, Eric, so like let me because it is only going to get
darker.
No, my wife came in with a hat, and I had no idea who she was, and I was wondering who the stranger was coming down the stairs. Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, he's got to go wash his hands. Go wash your hands. Go wash your hands, you filthy animals. Eric, thank you very much for coming in. Everybody, check out Eric. Check out the podcast. It's amazing stuff. It is discourse that is based on really getting to understand people, and it's not divisive for the sake of it. It's actually insightful for the sake of it.
And now we're gonna go get our barbecue.
Now we're gonna go barbecue some. Hold on a sec. Viva, didn't we handle this in the 90s when that idiot kid lit his hair on fire because he saw it on Beavis Butthead? Yeah, we know that's it. We've had it in one form or another for a long time. It's just hyper concentrated, and it's been hyper politicized. Before it was just, but it was not as hyper political before, but maybe it was. Josh says, "Yep, it's been around since when God asked Cain about the news on Abel."
True.
Okay, guys, thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everyone had a good time. Eric, thank you as always. Thank you for helping me set up the podcast. I thank you for you helped me immensely get that podcast going, and now that's one of the reasons why I feel guilty that I'm not pursuing it, but I might get back into it when the kids get back to school.
Cool.
Al Martin says, one Canadian province has one family which owns all competing major media plus other industries. Of course, corruption galore as a result. Yeah, that was something about Chomsky had to do to manufacturing consent. He had to do an update because of how the media had gotten so much more concentrated since he originally wrote manufacturing consent.
Yeah. Okay.
Eric, let's stick around for 1 second. I'm going to tune off with everybody else and put my thumb to the lens. Everyone, thank you very much. Stay. Oh, there's Matt.
Stay alive.
Viva Fry.
Stay alive. All right, everyone, have a good evening. Stay healthy. I'll see you all soon. I'm going to have a video tomorrow. Promise. Peace out. Booyah.